branding, even though it's changed over time since I started, but it still, I think, is misunderstood in terms of the value it offers, where it plays within the organization. And I am a firm believer that if the brand is the culmination of the messages you put out, but then also the customer experience you deliver, ops plays a big role in part two, right? So let me ask, in your opinion, what is branding? And is it important for companies to focus on?
Yes. And if I get to qualify by saying I'm an ops guy answering this question, coming from my world and my perspective, I focus a lot more on the customer experience piece, but with this exception too, and that is our role in marketing and strategy for a company is to inform them of what they can do, what they're capable of doing, which oftentimes they don't know.
Okay.
So for me, branding is going to be well served. The customer's perception of you, the reputation you get in the marketplace, the trust you build with people who decide where to go for their services.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirchner, and today I'm welcoming Tim Van Mieghem to the show. So let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. So first, thank you so much for being here, Tim. I'm really excited to have you on.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. So we're going to have a fun chat about whether the brand plays an important part in operations and ultimately business valuation, right? For either exit strategies or even M&A deals. But Tim is the perfect expert to talk about this topic because he's a partner of the ProAction Group, an operational consulting firm he co-founded, and he's authored several books that we will link to in the show notes so you can go check those out. But instead of me reading the rest of your bio, let's have a little bit of fun with some rapid fire questions to help you share your story. All right. All right. So, Tim, what are you an expert in? What is your superpower?
Good. I would say that my superpower is my brain and the way it works. I'm the type of person, if I sit down to analyze an income statement or a process, 3 or 4 hours go by and it feels like a minute.
That's excellent, because that would not be my superpower in any way, shape, or form. So excellent. All right. So then tell me, what does your company do?
So we're an operational consulting firm, and we work with companies to help them align operations with customer demand. In other words, like, you spend so much time and effort getting demand. We focus on the other side. Okay, let's set up our company to fill the actual demand that's coming in. And it's not about productivity. It's not about cost reduction. It's about filling that demand well, actually preparing for it and come as it is. We aren't trying to push the customers into a certain approach or time. We want to understand what they need and want, and then set up our operation to be able to provide that.
Right. I like that, because I'm going to throw a branding tie in there, in that there is nothing worse in building your brand than, like you said, to create demand and then not be able to fill it. Talk about busting customer expectations right out of the gate, right? So
exactly. And it's a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, self-inflicted wound. Exactly. We all want growth, but it needs to be managed growth.
Yes.
So, all right. So, and then how are you unique? So what would you say really differentiates the ProAction Group?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a couple things. The first is that mindset that we focus on results and performance. And to do that, you first have to understand. We always start any project, any relationship with a client. We start by understanding what they do, why they do what they do, their current approach, and what the customer demand is. What are the demand patterns? What's important to them? And just as importantly, a lot of times there's a saying that we have that you're probably more familiar with than I am, which is the problem is never the problem.
Right.
When they call us and we get a chance to come in and connect with the leadership of a company, what they bring up as problems are often the symptoms, and we need to dig in to find out what the actual problem is. So we always start there. And the other thing I'll mention about our firm that I really like is every one of our consultants has either run a company, run a plant or a facility or a supply chain. We value experience along with the methodologies and approaches that we bring to bear.
I like that. Because not only does it provide you with, excellent insights, but you have the empathy there too, right? A
Yes.
little bit
Oh,
of that in the business relationship is,
yes.
hey, we understand. You tell your client, we get it. We understand what you're going through and we honor that, but hey, let's fix it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, so who is your ideal client?
So it's any, boy, I love that question. It's really any company that really wants to improve on the operations side. So it could be throughput, it could be quality related, it could be a cost issue if they like. Anyone who's and we work with manufacturing companies, we work with distribution, service companies, healthcare, it's all over the board.
Okay.
The real issue is that there is either a burning platform to improve or a commitment at the highest level, like they really want to be better.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. All right. I'm going to ask you a couple questions more about you now. Get to know
Okay,
you. So,
good. One of my favorite topics.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. What about your job gets you up in the morning?
Oh man, there's a lot. I'm so fortunate to have this job, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story on that. When I first came out of college, I'm an accountant. I'm a
Yeah.
CPA, and my first job was I was an auditor.
Mm.
And I remember one day so clearly, I'm like, gosh, this day is dragging. Like it seems like it's going on forever. And I look at the clock to see what time it was. It was like 8:30 in the morning. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And then a good friend of mine helped me and I got into the operational consulting team.
Okay.
And from that day forward, like if it's Monday or Friday, I don't care. And a big part of it is like you asked me before about my superpower. It's the ability to analyze, to help improve, to make change, to actually that I get to leave something very different behind than we
Yeah.
found.
Yeah.
And another aspect of it is that the way our job works is first you go to a new company, you get to see how they operate. I'd probably pay to go on tours of companies, but it's my job. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is actually connecting with people, like really digging in, getting to know them, what's important, and
Hmm.
what's the pain that they have that we need to solve. That's our job. And
No,
it's a joy. It's endlessly interesting, new companies all the time. And we really do impact people's lives for the
I
better.
love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm very similar to you in that I love getting in and learning everything there is to
Yes.
know about the company, the industry, their customers. It's just fascinating to see well, it's fascinating to see how many types of companies, how many different ways you can earn a living doing
Yes.
things that most people just don't even think about, right? That would lead to a company. But I love that. So, all right, a couple more questions for you, and then we're going to jump into branding. But what did you learn from your very first client engagement?
Oh boy. I'll say this, the one that really sticks out in my mind is when change is on the table, it's counterintuitive, it's uncomfortable, it's
Mhm.
scary to everybody. And data will not make change happen, but without it, it's impossible
Right.
or really unlikely. So digging in, and it's really kind of pursuit of what's true, understanding what's going on in the company sheds light and makes it so much easier to make the case and to help people become part of the solution when
Hmm.
they can look at that data as well and kind of come to the conclusions alongside instead of this isn't something being done to them, they're part of it. And it makes sense. They can understand it, see the flow. It's not some arbitrary, authority based decision. Thou shalt not do now do this. It's actually, oh yeah, this is what we should do.
Yeah. No, I like that because absolutely, when you're a business owner and you're trying to make decisions, or even the executive team, or even, someone on the line who's servicing a client, you have to understand the data behind it. But then you also need the qualitative data as well, which is kind of where I play to kind of say, well, why? Why do we have to do it that way? Why is it
Exactly.
working? And if we want people to really understand the data and the numbers, how do we translate it in a way that makes it meaningful for them? And a lot of that then is communication and, all the culture and all the great things that come out with, branding. So I like that. All right, two quick personal questions. Because I love to travel, what was your favorite vacation?
Oh my gosh. Well, the, this is the next one.
Okay, that is a perfect answer. That is a
but
perfect answer.
but I'll answer your question without the joke. There's one that sticks in my head. It just probably because it was one of the first ones was back in the 70s, like I think it was 1976, the bicentennial year. My parents took us to Disney World, and I got to march. It was selected out of the crowd to march in the Independence Day parade. It was so exciting. That leaves a mark. Yeah, that was
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. All right, best business book you ever read.
You know, I'll the first one that came to mind because it changed my thinking is The Goal. Came out in the 70s, and it's really an underlying philosophy behind or principles behind lean manufacturing. And it's a novel as well as having a point. It's not just a textbook, it's set in a novel. So it's really easy to read and understand, and learning why it works and why running a plant to maximize efficiency is really counterproductive. It's bad news. We run if you It's what first taught gave me the idea that you run a plant to serve the customer, to fill orders, not to be efficient.
Hmm.
And it's one of the first questions I ask when I meet leadership of a new plant is, how are things going? And if they tell me, if they focus on, look at all our machines are running, our utilization is high, that tells me a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
That was just the goal. Great, great, great book.
I like that. I like that. All right. Well, now let's really dig into your expertise because I would love to have a conversation with you about, you know, branding, even though it's changed over time since I started, but it still, I think, is misunderstood in terms of the value it offers, where it plays within the organization. And I am a firm believer that if the brand is the culmination of the messages you put out, but then also the customer experience you deliver, ops plays a big role in part two, right? So,
Amen.
so let me ask, in your opinion, what is branding? And is it important for companies to focus on?
Yes. And if I get to qualify by saying I'm an ops guy answering this question, it's all from coming from my world and my perspective. It is, I focus a lot more on the customer experience piece, but with this exception too, and that is our role in marketing and strategy for a company uh, is to inform them of what they can do, what they're capable of doing,
Hmm.
which oftentimes they don't know.
Okay.
So for me, branding is going to be well served. The customer's perception of you, the reputation you get in the marketplace, the trust you build with people who decide where to spend their money, where to go for their services,
Right.
is going to be grown or deteriorated by, are we able to do what we say? Do we ship on time? Do we complete that order as expected, accurately, with good quality, with a smile on our face, without a lot of drama?
Hmm.
Uh, if that happens time and again, if we're able to offer lead times that our competition can't or don't offer, or better lead times than we used to offer,
Right.
just in comparison, that's going to build real momentum and pricing strength. It's going to create new demand is how I look at it from a very practical perspective.
Right.
My thought would be is that we really understand that, looking at operations and what we can and accomplish, and then share that with the branding and marketing team so that they can,
Yeah.
don't have a lot of views and opinions on how to share it so that it gets the most exposure and drives behavior. But the part that we can play is we can give you a strong foundation to build off of.
Right. No, I like that. When I come in and I talk to my customers at the beginning of a phase and, I have the CEO and the executive team in the room and we're talking about branding, I always kind of say, well, I want your most important people in the room to be part of this conversation.
Yes.
And they never think of the ops person. And I kind of have to push back and say, whether you have an official ops person or not, who is the person that is most instrumental to delivering the customer experience or overseeing the customer experience? Because,
Yeah,
yeah, like you were talking about, I want to hear from them. If I'm supposed to help find gaps in the experience, I need to understand, well, how do you go to market? How do you deliver the product or the service that you're intending to deliver?
exactly. And I'll take that one more step,
Yeah.
which is when we look at operations, we're not doing it from a branding perspective necessarily. I mean, it's maybe in the back of our minds, but we are looking at their demand patterns. We're looking at their performance, on time delivery, quality, the lead time. And when we then model and map out what they can accomplish, and
Hmm.
I'll never forget this, Sue. I had this was in an early stage with a client a couple of years ago. They're an engineered products firm. They made infrastructure that's used in distribution buildings.
Right.
And they were growing very quickly. And we got a chance to look at their process. And then I got to ask him these questions. Said, today, your lead time from beginning to end is somewhere between 11 and 14 weeks. Said, if you could offer it 7 to 9 weeks consistently, what would that mean to your business? And he said, I could raise my prices 10% and I'd sell 10% more still.
Great.
That is what I'm talking about. That's a huge part of what we're trying to accomplish.
Excellent.
For an example,
Yeah. Now you talk about you help companies uncover latent value, and we talked
yes,
about this a little bit and stuff like that.
yes.
So is branding ever included in that discussion?
Boy, you're making me think now because it's not directly. We are not looking at customer satisfaction directly. We do look at things like the on-time delivery. We do look at negative feedback or customer complaints so that we have evidence of where are we not providing, where are we not following through with what the customer expected. Typically, if they're interested directly in branding, they're talking to somebody else.
Hmm.
Ours is more of an input. It's the same thing, Sue, with strategy.
Yeah.
We're not leading strategic planning for clients, but when they do a strategic planning, we're an important input.
Yeah. Yeah. And how you're going to deliver that. No, I get that. And yeah, and the reason I'm asking is, again, selfishly, I think branding touches every single part of the organization. And there's a lot of
That's a
companies that
great point.
that, don't see that yet or why. So that's why I love talking to you. And not to
Yeah.
put anybody on the spot about it, but it was like, how could we inject more conversation around branding in the ops, logistics,
Yep.
side of the company?
And you really do hit on an important point, and this does come up quite a bit. Is when we like, we're on the shop floor or the equivalent of the shop floor, depending on the business, and talking to the people who are making the product or interacting with the end customer or what have you. And we get to talk to them and ask them what's important, or we ask them, how do you know if you're winning the day?
Yeah.
What does success look like?
Hmm.
We learn so much about how they view it. And two, is there any internal branding going on? And the strongest companies are the ones where the worker understands the link between what they do on an everyday basis and customer satisfaction.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Because it definitely is, when you're talking about, and I love what you said earlier about, is your plant just optimized for efficiency, or is
Yes.
it optimized to deliver something great to the customer? So I love that you said that. But if no one ever bothers within an organization to tell the people in the plant, what the customer wants, who the customer is, how important their work is to delivering that experience, you can't expect them to just generally or,
Yeah.
think of that on their own. So,
Well, you mentioned, that we like to think about uncovering hidden value or latent value.
mhm.
And one of the ways that I think about that is companies under leveraging their resources, whether it's equipment in a factory or their computer system and their people.
Mm,
And how engaged is their team? And how many people, like when we actually give people an opportunity to voice their ideas and opinions,
yeah.
it is amazing what they come up with and what they already believe. But the atmosphere, the tone, they're not being asked to share. They're not being asked to think about that. They're being asked to, hey, pull this lever, push that switch, or what have
Mhm.
you. And it's an underutilized resource, one that sadly so, because one of the things I really love about our business, I said we change people's lives. One of them is that we want people involved every day in problem solving. Like we get rid of the blame culture. We identify opportunities to improve. And then if you empower your team, if people are actually, they own their world, whatever their world is, a department, a location, a step in,
Right.
in the process, they own it. There's pride and effort and thought that goes into it. And that's being ignored and outright squashed today. I'm assuming not intentionally, but the outcome is unfortunately that.
Yeah. Now, it reminds me when I work with a client, I always insist at the end of the big presentation about this is your brand strategy, this is what your customer
Yeah.
said you were great at, and things like that. I insist that we share that with the entire company, right? And whether the CEO delivers it or I deliver it coming in as the outsider, but I insist on sharing that because it's one of those things where it's like, number one, it's inspirational, right? For all of your employees to say, like, oh, yeah, I work really hard to get things out on time, and our customers said we were really good at that. Or,
Yes.
we created this brand new product and launched it, and it was a hit. Gosh, there was a lot of pieces to that, but the plant and production was obviously a key component to that kind of thing. And I have employees come up to me afterwards and just say, thank you, because no one ever shares that information with us, right? So
Yeah.
it's gratifying to me. And another thing I ask my clients to do, which not all of them do, but it's, hey, let's print a target market persona of who your customer is. Let's print posters of these people and let's put them around everywhere in the organization. Let's print your brand promise and put it everywhere around the organization because it just helps everyone solve problems better, like you were
Does.
talking about.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's one of the more touching parts of our job, and I'll bet this is true for you too, is when we go in and do a good job of interviewing people, we're vulnerable, we're present, we're not, they know that this is an important conversation,
Hmm.
that sometimes, how many times there's many people who are never heard or don't feel heard, and just hearing them
Yeah.
is an immediate boost. And then when you can build it into the process that people have a voice in their domain, in the area where they focus and work, you're certainly improving performance, but it's also, you have employees who are passionate about the customer and the company.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. So, all right, well, let's switch a little bit and talk about another thing that you and I had discussed prior to the podcast was, you obviously do a lot of work with it, uncovering this value or
Yes.
latent value and helping them become more valuable and grow as a company also then leads to exit strategies and or it
Yes.
may lead to being acquired or a merger deal. And so you deal with a lot of private equity guys as well as owners and things like that. So why don't more of those, types of deals and strategies and things like that? Why do you think, and this is not, again, not putting anybody in the seat, why don't you think they talk about the brand more in those discussions, right? Because if you could improve the brand value, or let me say, not even necessarily improve the brand value, but prove you have brand value, wouldn't that increase the multiple for your exit or for your acquisition?
I think there's a few layers we could cover on your question,
Yeah.
Sue. One, it is absolutely considered, but it's considered in how it shows up in results
Mm.
for private equity when they look at profitability, or they call it EBITDA.
Mhm.
And it's, in a sense, it's built in. So if you've got the sales, if you're growing, then they kind of assume that your branding is doing what it's
It's
supposed to be
good.
doing. Yeah. Yeah. And with that said, and many private equity firms do recognize, here's another aspect of things that they will recognize when they're looking at a company that branding has led them to the results they have today. And then they recognize that they don't have any structured marketing, or very little structured marketing or sales work being done,
Mhm.
personnel team, that it's part of what they're excited about, or what their part of their investment thesis is going to be. We're going to add that, and then we're going to see that significant growth. We're not going to be comfortable with the status quo. you
Mhm.
know we're going to add that in. And the same thing is true on the operations side.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and that's interesting because I like to push back a lot of times with data's good, numbers are great. I absolutely get that if the company's growing, that's perfect. But sometimes it takes a step back to kind of see, like, why is it growing? Is it because
Yes.
you're the only game in town? And if you
Yes.
were to acquire this firm and a competitor comes in because, oh, there's chaos in the marketplace, suddenly the valuation goes down dramatically from things
Yes.
like that. Or, I've worked with some business owners who said, I'm getting ready to sell in a couple of years, and I'm like, okay, well, can you prove in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just some qualitative interviews that you do every year with your key customers, can you prove loyalty in some way?
Yes.
Right? Because I would think that, especially in a merger and acquisition situation, and I've helped companies with a lot of them, they're always shocked that employees flee or
Yes.
customers flee after they acquired a company specifically for those two things. And then when
Yes.
I talk to them, I'm like, well, did you communicate with them at all? Were you just concentrated on the IT, the operations, the
Right.
finances, and did you ignore the people part of it? Because the brand is an amazing linchpin to kind of talk about where you're going,
Absolutely.
why your company's going to be better after this transaction, and that how your customers are going to play a key part of it, and how these acquired employees are going to play a key part of it. That I would think if you could somehow or other show some loyalty, even if it's not big quantitative data, but qualitative data, that might help, companies to see like, yes, I am excited about acquiring this firm because I feel like even if we mess up here and there, they're going to stick with it because,
Yep.
we've
Well,
kept key components in place.
so what you're describing is exactly, it's mirrored on the upside. It's mirrored on the upside, that digging in and understanding what got us to the performance that we have today and what's left on the table can have dramatic implications. And think about this one too, directly the relationship between the branding and the operations.
Mhm.
When you talk about customer loyalty, it is exactly that. It's understanding which, if I'm looking into which customers are loyal, well, what is it about us that makes them loyal?
Right.
Is it purely, hey, we take them out for dinner every couple of months? Is it because we do, we're on time? Is it because of a quality or a feature of our, it's understanding that. And the purpose of that, again, the results they're getting today are a result of what they're doing. So if we see that this is a big part of our hypotheses as well. As when we look at operations, and as an example, we'll find that they think a company is out of capacity.
Hmm.
We're running 80% of capacity. Like, we have to look at building a new location or a new line, and then we come in and look and say, actually, you're at about 50% capacity. It was estimated before. We're actually calculating it now. And when you look at the impact of, for example, we can handle the next 20% of growth without adding new equipment or any overhead and only a fraction of the labor hours,
Hmm.
that's you start printing money. You go from the 12 or 13% profit margin to 21%. Like, it's a shift. It's a big shift.
Yeah.
And yes, so I think one thing I would say is to your clients and to your listeners who own their own company is, even if you're not thinking about selling it, think about selling it.
Hmm.
And think about, if it's like, you know, I've noticed this about myself. I always think my house is clean, and then if guests are coming, all of a sudden I notice, holy cow, look at all this stuff. I got to clean this and clean that,
Right.
because and taking that same approach and looking at it and saying, what's the real potential? What's the real value? Like you mentioned, looking for latent or hidden value.
Hmm.
Uh, a big phrase that's out today quite a bit is value creation. And it's a great topic, but I'm like, forget value creation. Let's start by value claiming. Let's
Mm.
claim the value we've already created. If we have a plant that's capable of producing, you know, 200 widgets a day, or serving 200 customers a day, but we're serving 100, and we think we're at capacity, that we're not creating new value. Let's stop doing the things that prevent us from serving the 200 a day and make it easier. Let's allow that to happen. That's claiming value. It's already there. We built it. You invested to make it happen. It's like, I asked some friends who are on the IT side, and I'm like, what percentage of the software that people buy and install are they using? And after they're done laughing, they'll say, 10, 20% maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you already bought it. Why not use it?
Exactly. Figure it out.
Yeah,
Take,
figure it out.
take the time to figure it out and leverage that investment. Yeah. Well, I would talk to you all day here, Tim, because number one, I
Seriously.
love talking with you, and this is just fascinating. But I've got a couple closers here
Good.
for you. But first of all, I mean, I'm all about honoring small and mid-sized businesses who are just killing it with their brand. So, is there one that you would give a shout out to, an organization, a company that you're just like, man, they do such a great job?
Boy, that is a great, great question. And yes, I would. I think of Emily Shaw. She's with Lucian. They do Sandler based
Hmm.
sales training
Okay.
out of Indianapolis. And their ability to really help companies clarify and nail down, how do you actually sell your product
Hmm.
consistently? How do you get the pain? How do you find out what problem needs to be solved? They do such a great job with that. And it's been a very important part of our journey.
Our journey. Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. So Tim, thank you for spending so much time with me today and sharing your insights. It was fascinating, and I think everyone listening is going to agree with me on that. But if people want to talk to you about, gosh, how can you help me find, latent value in my organization or improve our operations, or even to find out about the books you've written and things like that, where can they find you?
Yes. So the best, easiest way is proactiongroup.com for the company, and shockingprofit.com, which is the podcast and the book that's coming out in the fall.
Yay!
Finally written. Now it's the publishing time. Yeah. Thanks.
Yay! Well, congratulations. I know that's a huge endeavor.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you for joining me. I greatly appreciate your time. And thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed it, I would love if you would help me build a strong brand following for the show. So please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.